The 2nd of March, 1900, Volume 3. The union of wills is that which most binds the soul to Jesus. This morning, after I received Holy Communion, my sweet Jesus made himself seen, crucified, and I felt drawn interiorly to reflect myself in him, to be able to become like him, and Jesus reflected himself in me, to draw me to his likeness. While doing this, I felt the pains of my crucified Lord being infused in me. And with all goodness, he told me, I want suffering to be your nourishment, not only as suffering, but as the fruit of my will. The most sincere kiss which binds our friendship more tightly is the union of our wills, and the indissoluble bond that will clasp us in continuous embraces will be the continuous suffering. While he was saying this, blessed Jesus unnailed himself, took his cross, and laid it in the interior of my body, and I too was so stretched as to feel my bones being dislocated. Moreover, a hand, but I cannot tell with certainty whose it was, pierced my hands and feet through. Jesus, who was seated on the cross, which lay in my interior, was all pleased with my suffering and with the one who was piercing my hands. And he added, now I can rest in tranquillity. I do not even have to take the trouble to crucify you, because obedience wants to do everything herself, and I leave you freely in the hands of obedience. And moving quickly from upon the cross, he placed himself upon my heart to rest. Who can say in how much suffering I remain, being in that position? After I remained like this for a long time, Jesus would not bother relieving me as the other times, so as to let me return to my natural state. I could no longer see that hand which had put me on the cross. I said this to Jesus, and he replied, who put you on the cross? Did I perhaps do it? It was obedience, and obedience must remove you from it. It seems that this time he wanted to joke, and by his highest grace I obtained that blessed Jesus would free me. End of the reading. The 2nd of March, 1902, Volume 4, The Effects of Faith. This morning I felt all concerned, as if the Lord wanted to deprive me again of his presence, and therefore take sufferings away from me. And I also felt a little bit of discouragement. Then after much waiting, he came for just a little and told me, my daughter, one who nourishes himself with faith acquires divine life, and by acquiring divine life, he destroys the human. That is, he destroys within himself the germs which original sin produced, reacquiring the perfect nature as came out of my hands, similar to me. And by this he comes to surpass the very angelic nature in nobility. Having said this, he disappeared. End of the reading. The 2nd of March, 1905, Volume 6. Jesus gives Luisa the key of his will. Continuing in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself, and I found myself with a key in my hand. And even though I was covering a long way and sometimes I would get distracted, yet as soon as I would think about the key, I would always find it in my hand. Now I could see that this key served to open a palace, and inside of it there was baby Jesus sleeping. But I could see everything from afar, and I was all in haste, in a hurry to go there and open it, for fear that he might wake up, that he might cry, and would not find me near him. So I hastened more and more, but when I got there, just about to go up, I found myself inside myself, and I remained concerned. However, afterwards, when blessed Jesus came, he told me, my daughter, the key that you always found in your hand is the key of my will, which I have placed in your hands. The one who has an object in his hands can do with it whatever he wants. End of the reading. The 2nd of March 1907, Volume 7. There is nothing that equals suffering willingly. Continuing in my usual state, and having learned that almost the entire town was with the influenza, and that in other places people were dying, I was praying our Lord that he would be so benign as to spare so many victims, and that he would make me suffer to spare them, since nowadays I suffer little or nothing, for he's taken this also away from me. While I was saying this, he told me in my interior, my daughter, it was said about me that it was necessary that one would die to save the whole people. It was a truth, but at that time it was not understood. In the same way, in all times, it is necessary that there be one who suffers to spare the others, and this one, in order to be accepted, must offer himself voluntarily and only for love of God and of his neighbour, to suffer himself in order to spare all the others. And the suffering of this one cannot be equalled by the suffering of all the others put together. There is no value that matches it. Do you think that the void of your suffering is nothing? Yet it is not a complete void. And if I suspend you completely, where will the peoples enter? Woe, woe. Things do not end here. End of the reading. The 2nd of March, 1921, Volume 12. Jesus changes the state of victim of Luisa in order to prepare the era of his will. As I was in my usual, lovable Jesus came and told me, my daughter, the third fiat, my fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven, will be like the rainbow which appeared in the sky after the deluge, which as rainbow of peace assured men that the deluge had passed. So will the third fiat be. As it comes to be known, loving and disinterested souls will come to live in my fiat. They will be like rainbows, rainbows of peace, which will reconcile heaven and earth and dispel the deluge of so many sins which inundate the earth. These rainbows of peace will have the third fiat as their own life. Therefore my fiat voluntas tua will have its completion in them. And just as the second fiat called me upon earth to live among men, the third fiat will call my will into souls, and it will reign in them on earth as in heaven. Then, since I was sad because of his absence, he added, my daughter, be cheered. Come into my will. I chose you among thousands and thousands, so that my will may have completion in you, and so that you may be like a rainbow of peace, which with its 7 colours attracts others to live in my will. Therefore, let us leave the earth aside. Up until now, I have kept you with me in order to appease my justice and prevent greater chastisements from being poured upon the earth. Now, let us allow the current of human evil to run. I want you with me in my volition to be occupied with preparing the era of my will. As you move forward on the path of my volition, the rainbow of peace will form, which will form the link of connection between the divine will and human will. From it, my will have life on earth, and this will begin the fulfillment of my prayer and the prayer of the whole church. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. End of the reading.
All that I am sings of a God who brings new life to birth in me.
The 2nd of March 1924, Volume 16. By virtue of the light of his will, Jesus extended himself to everyone and everything. Only one who lives in his will can do the same. This generation of legitimate children who preserve whole within themselves the purpose of creation will be as though the first to be created by God. I was thinking of how it could be that as my sweet Jesus thought, spoke, worked, and so on, he extended his thoughts into each sort of creature, into each word and work. And my beloved Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, there is nothing to be surprised about. In me there was the divinity with the unending light of its eternal will. In this light I could see very easily each thought, word, heartbeat, and act of the creatures. And as I thought, the light which I contained brought my thought to each sort of creatures, and so with my word and with all the rest which I did and suffered. See also the sun possesses this virtue. Its light is one, yet how many are not inundated by that light? If all the interior of man could be seen, his thoughts, heartbeats, affections, just as the sun invades everyone with its light, it would make its light flow in every thought, heartbeat, and the like. Now, if the light of the sun can do this without descending from high to the bottom in order to give its light and heat to each one, and yet it is nothing other than the shadow of my light, much more so can I do, who contain immense and unending light. And then it is my divine will that contains this virtue. As the soul enters my will, it opens the current of the light it contains, and invading all, my light brings to each one the thought, the word, the act, which have entered the current of its light. Therefore, there is nothing more sublime, more extensive, more divine, more holy than living in my will. The generations of its acts are incalculable. So when the soul is not united with my will and does not enter into it, she neither does her little round in it, nor does she open the current of its unending light. Therefore everything she does remains personal and individual. Her good, her prayer, is like the little light which is used inside rooms, which has no virtue of giving light to all receptacles of the house, and even less can it give light outside. And if oil is lacking, that is the continuation of her acts, the little light extinguishes, and she remains in the dark. Then I was fusing myself in the eternal divine volition, placing myself before everyone, in order to bring to the divine majesty, as first among all the acts of the creatures, the return of everything and their love. But as I was doing this, I thought to myself, how can it be that I can go before all, while I was born after so many generations? At the most, I should place myself in the middle, between the past and the future generations which will come, or rather, because of my unworthiness, I should be last, and behind everyone. My adorable Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, the whole of creation was created so that all would do my will. The life of the creatures was to flow within my will, as the blood flows in the vein. They were to live in it as my true children. Nothing was to be alien to them of all that belongs to me. I was to be their tender and loving father, and they were to be my tender and loving children. Now, since this was the purpose of creation, even though there have been other generations before which says nothing, they will be placed behind. And my will place as first the ones who will be and who have been faithful in maintaining whole the purpose for which they were created. These, whether they have come before or after, will occupy the first order before the divinity. For having maintained the purpose of creation, they will be distinguished among all and marked by the halo of our will as by a refulgent gem, and everyone will let them pass freely, so that they may occupy their first place of honour. There is nothing to be surprised about. It happens the same also in this low world. Imagine a king in the midst of his court, ministers, deputies, and armies. Then his little prince son arrives, and even though all the others are great, who does not let the little prince pass, that he may take his place of honour at the side of the king his father? Who deals with the king with the same familiarity which is worthy of a son? Who would blame this king and this son, who, though being the littlest of all, rises above all and takes his prime and legitimate place close to the king his father? Certainly no one. On the contrary, everyone would respect the right of the little prince. Descend even lower. Imagine a family. A son was born first, but he did not want to occupy himself with the doing the will of his father, nor did he want to study or work. He remained almost moronic in his sloth, forming the sorrow of the father. Then another son comes to the light, and this one, though more little, does the will of his father, studies, and arrives at becoming a professor, worthy of covering the highest positions. Now, who is first in that family? Who receives his place of honour close to the father? Is it perhaps not the one who came last? Therefore, my daughter, only those who will have preserved whole within them the purpose of creation will be my true legitimate children. By doing my will, they have preserved within them the pure blood of their celestial Father, who has given them all the features of his likeness, and therefore it will be very easy to recognize them as our legitimate children. Our will preserve them noble, pure, fresh, all love for the one who created them. And as our children, who have always been in our will and who never gave life to their own, they will be like the first to be created by us and will give us the glory and the honour of the purpose for which all things were created. This is why the world cannot end. We are waiting for the generation of our children, who by living in our will give us the glory of our works. These will have my will alone as life. It will be so natural, spontaneous, effortless for them to do the divine will, just as natural is the heartbeat, the breathing, the blood circulation. And so for them we will not keep it as a law, because laws are for rebels, but as life, as honour, as beginning, and as end. Therefore, my daughter, may you take to heart my will alone. Be concerned with nothing else. If you want your Jesus to fulfill and enclose in you the purpose of all creation. End of the reading. The 2nd of March, 1926, Volume 19. Silence on that which regards the truths of the divine will forms the tomb of these truths, while the word forms the resurrection. The glory be of the soul in the divine will. I felt oppressed, and with such reluctance to open my soul to manifest what my blessed Jesus tells me, that I would have rather remained silent forever, so that nothing would be known any more. I lamented to my sweet Jesus, saying, "Oh, if you told me not to say anything to anyone ever again of what passes between you and me, from what an enormous weight you would free me, how happy I would be. Don't you see my great repugnance and the effort I have to make?" But while I was saying this, my always lovable Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, would you want to bury the light, the grace, the truth, and so prepare the tomb for your Jesus? Silence on anything which is truth forms the burial of the truth, while the word forms the resurrection of the truth. It makes light, grace, and good rise again. More so, since the word on the truth comes from the supreme fiat. The word had its divine field when in creation, with the word fiat, I issued the whole creation. I could have created it remaining silent also, but I wanted to use the word fiat so that the word too might have divine origin. And since it would contain the creative power, whoever would use it to manifest what belongs to me might have the power to communicate those truths to whomever would have the fortune to listen to him. For you, then, there is a stronger reason. In fact, since the greater part of everything I tell you are things which regard my supreme will, it is not only the original word, but the fiat itself, which entering the field again as in creation, wants to make known the immense goods that my will contains. And it communicates so much power to everything I manifest about it as to be enough to form the new creation of my will within souls. Is this the love you have for me, that with your silence you want to form the tomb for my will? I remain frightened and more afflicted than before, and I pray Jesus to give me the grace to fulfill his most holy will. And my beloved Jesus, as though wanting to cheer me, came out from within my interior and, squeezing me tightly to his most holy heart, infused new strength in me. At that moment the heavens opened, and I heard everyone say in chorus, "Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit." I don't know how, but it was my turn to answer, "As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen." But who can say what was happening? In the word Father, one could see the creative power flowing everywhere, preserving everything, giving life to everything. The mere breath of this word was enough to maintain everything he had created intact, beautiful, and ever new. In the word Son, one could see all the works of the word, renewed, ordered, and all in act of filling heaven and earth to give themselves for the good of creatures. In the word Holy Spirit, one could see all things being invested with a speaking, operative, and vivifying love. But who can say everything? I felt my poor mind immersed in the eternal Beatitudes. My adorable Jesus, wanting to call me back into myself, told me, "My daughter, do you know why it was your turn to say the second part of the Glory Be? Since my will is in you, it befitted you to bring the earth up to heaven, in order to give in the name of all, together with the celestial court, that glory which will never end, world without end. Eternal things which never end can be found only in my will, and one who possesses it is in communication with heaven. This glory takes part in everything they do in the celestial regions, and she is as though in act, together with the celestial blessed." End of the reading. The 2nd of March, 1931, Volume 29. How offering the sacrifice of the saints doubles the glory. The divine will has the resurrective virtue. One who does the divine will acquires the right to the divine goods. I was continuing my acts in the divine will, and I kept offering the sacrifices that the saints of the Old Testament did, those of my celestial Mama, all the sacrifices of my beloved Jesus, and so on with all the rest. The divine will placed them all in order for me before my mind, and I kept offering them as the most beautiful homage to my Creator. But while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, There is not one thing suffered and done by all the saints of the history of the world in which my will has not had its part, making itself actor and concurrent with strength, with help, with support for the sacrifice or work that they did. Now the soul, by offering them to God as homage of glory, calls back the memory of that sacrifice and work, and my divine will recognizes from what, from its own, it placed in those acts, and it gives the virtue of doubling the glory of that sacrifice for God and for the one who had the good of sacrificing and operating in order to fulfill my divine will. True good never ceases, either in heaven or on earth. It is enough for a creature to remember it and offer it, that the glory in heaven is renewed, and the effects of that good descend upon earth and for the good of creatures. Therefore, the life of true good is not subject to dying. In fact, who is the life of my church? Who nourishes her and acts as her teacher, if not the brief course of my life down here? I can say that they are my pains that sustain her. They are my doctrines that instruct her. They are the sacraments that nourish her. So all the good that I did not die, but remain with the fullness of life, and life that vivifies, preserves, nourishes and grows continuously, and gives itself to whoever wants it. And as the creature remembers, she already places herself in relationship with my goods, and as she keeps offering them, they redouble to give themselves to her. And I feel the glory of what I did for love of creatures being redoubled. More so, since one who operates in my divine will acquires the resurrective virtue. As the soul keeps doing her acts, her offerings in it, my fiat runs to place in them the seed of light, and its light possesses the virtue of raising in each instant and act. It seems like the sun that rises for each little plant, for each flower. In fact, it does not give the same thing to all, as if it were rising for each one. It gives one effect to the little plant, one colour to the flower, and colours distinct from the other. Such are the acts done in my divine will. They expose themselves to the rays of my divine sun and receive from it the seed of light that makes rise in each act of creature such varieties of beauties and distinct colours, and one act calls for another to rise. So one who lives in my will with the resurrective seed of my light gives me always new things, and she is always in act of rising again continuously in the love, in the glory, and in the very life of her Creator. Then I continued my acts in the divine will. I wanted to embrace everything in order to place in each created thing my adoration, my love, my gratitude to He who had loved me so much and had created so many things for love of me. And my sweet Jesus added, Good daughter, for one who lives in my divine will and operates in it, the love of my fiat is so great in seeing the littleness of the creature going around in all created things to place in them her little acts, to say that she not only loves this divine will, but wants to recognize all its acts as many pledges of love. Love makes more love arise, and my will gives the rights to the soul in the divine goods. So each act that the creature does is a right that she acquires in the properties of her Creator. It happens that, by right, she feels herself being loved by the Supreme Being, because she has placed her love in the eternal love and has acquired the right to be loved. The love of the creature and the divine love have fused together, and on both sides they feel the right to love each other. By right she enjoys the light of the sun. By right she breathes the air, drinks the water, feeds herself with the fruits of the earth, and so with all the rest. And oh, the great difference of one who takes with rights the divine goods, This one can be called daughter, while the others can be called servants. And the creature with these rights gives us the love of our child, love of disinterest, love that saves, true love. Therefore live always in my divine will, that you may feel within yourself and enjoy all the love of the divine paternity. End of the reading. There are no more readings today.